everything else. You cannot escape living in a religious society. You cannot escape tying your views on government. The founders believed that we could not build this country without faith in God. And it was because they had just come out of a great revival in the midst of a 500-year reformation. They were free, they were virtuous, and they had a just society. Then they voted, then they fought. And they believed that rights come from God. Government exists to protect those rights. At the beginning of the 20th century, late 19th, early 20th century, the ideas of the French Revolution engulfed the West. And we began to believe rights come from government. There is no God, and if there is one, you keep him in your church. We believed that government existed to make the world a better place. And what we got to show for it was 170 million people killed by their own governments in the last century. About 500 million if you count indirect deaths. After that long introduction, I'll try to condense my speech down, but we are short one speaker. And I'm not going to give the speech that I'd written. I wrote my whole speech yesterday driving down Highway 49 pulling a grain cart. And the reason I'm not going to give that speech is because my heart's broken. The other speaker that was supposed to be here today that's not here is a man named Cal Zastrow. And I know the Ashleys and a few other people know him. If you've not met Cal, you're really missing something. Yeah. He is the most zealous brother I've ever met in my life. He's working in Mississippi full-time to help us get the personhood amendment on the ballot. When he's not doing that, he's down at the abortion clinic counseling mothers. And when he's not doing that, he's smuggling Bibles into communist countries. And I've never heard him sad. But yesterday I called him early in the morning to see if I could have an extra 5 minutes. James gave me 10 and him 15, and I said, I can't do it in 10. And he was weeping. And the reason he was weeping is because a dear friend of his was shot yesterday. I'm going to read the press release that we sent out this morning. Yesterday afternoon, rather. This morning, a violent man murdered a peaceful pro-life Christian, Jim Pulliam, my close friend. Jim was completely nonviolent and he never condoned using violence. I knew him very well and had prayed and ministered with him often. He was praying and holding a poster of a newborn baby outside of Oswego High School. One of the students in the school was his granddaughter. His beating heart and measurable brain waves are stopped. Also today, 4,000 American preborn children with beating hearts and measurable brain waves are being murdered with suction, abortion machines, or drugs. Their beating hearts and measurable brain waves are stopped. We condemn both forms of murder. Don't shoot, smack, stab, slap, or suck the arms and legs off children with suction machines. Stop the violence. The last time I talked to Jim was this week, Monday. I prayed with him over the phone as he was preparing to go talk about Jesus and show pro-life signs in front of the high school where he was martyred this morning. As I said, I'm not going to give the speech I had planned. I've run for office, as I mentioned. I've spoken at healthcare forums and Tea Party debate events all over the state. I've spoken about homeschooling, family, things like that. And I had a speech written that was going to fire you up, educate you, and hopefully entertain you a little bit. But I feel compelled to say something that comes from here. And what I say is not going to help me if I ever run for office again. It's not the kind of thing that will make me get a lot more invitations. And it's really troubling because I'm speaking to myself as much as I am to you. See, yesterday we commemorated the 8th anniversary of 3,000 innocent Americans, or judicially innocent Americans, who had done nothing to deserve it, being unexpectedly killed while they were busy going about their lives and minding their own business. We had a day of mourning. We have memorials to them every year. But ever since that day, there have been 4,000 judicially innocent Americans killed. They were minding their own business, and they were brutally killed. Every day. That's about 15 million since 9/11/01. So I'm going to give you a series of warnings, and this part of it I kind of thought some of beforehand, but this really focused my mind. And I'm going to give you warnings about insufficient solutions, where we are and how we got here, and then maybe some real solutions. I mentioned the Russian Revolution. Y'all understand that the Tsar was not treating people great. Y'all understand that things in Germany weren't great before Hitler came to power. Y'all understand, I mentioned most of y'all are educated, so who knows the difference between the French and American revolutions and what they were fighting for and things like that. Okay, well, I won't rehash that. But my first warning to all of us in the Tea Party movement that are starting to get concerned about the direction of our country is that sometimes the solution can be worse than the sickness. See, we all know that Obama's the boogeyman. He's a bad guy. We know that the Democrats in Congress are doing thousands of things that are unconstitutional. We know that they're pro-abortion. We know all this. But if you're looking for a man on the white horse, sometimes the man on the white horse will ride right over you. See, you look at the way Obama's supporters were so euphoric about him, like he was almost a messiah. And we're on the right. I saw the same thing out of Ron Paul supporters. We can do the same thing to some degree about Reagan or about Sarah Palin or whoever our hero is. We are not looking for a man to come in on a white horse and save this country. We have one Messiah. He said, "It is finished." And we have to understand that this can be intentional or unintentional. See, there are people who see these events and they say, "Oh, the crowd's moving this way. I better get out front and lead them." And they will use these events to consolidate their own power. Or it can be unintentional. We're looking for an alternative to Obama. Our hope is not in the next Republican presidential candidate. Our hope is not in electing a Republican Congress. Our hope is that Jesus Christ would come with His gospel in word and in power. That is our only hope. Our hope is that we would turn as a people. Warning number 2 is related to the subtle following the man on the white horse, and that is we can go back to sleep. Who remembers 1992 when Bill Clinton was elected? Who was paying attention then? All right, Bill Clinton was a bad guy. We all think so. No conservatives like Bill Clinton. So in 1994, Newt Gingrich came along with his contract with America. And I'd like to point something out. We already have a contract with America. It's called the Constitution. And if they would obey that, we'd be happy. You know, in 1998, speaking of Bill Clinton, we impeached a president and almost removed him for office. And who remembers what the crime was? Perjury, lying under oath. But do you realize that we have 530 some odd premeditated perjurers in Washington right now? Because Republicans and Democrats say, they stand up somewhere like this, they put their hand on this, most of them do, and say, "I will uphold and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic." And they have no intention of doing that. The Congressman Joe was right. He lied. But so do all the people who say, "I will uphold and defend the Constitution," because they have no intention of doing it. They vote for things every day that are unconstitutional. They vote against things that are constitutional. They don't do what they're supposed to do. They do. For instance, we had a pro-life Republican